Hello everyone, my name is Sierra and welcome to my channel. I'm an American currently living in Mauritius, and today I'll be sharing a video with you regarding the history of this multicultural and friendly island nation. Before we get started, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe in an effort to help bring more awareness to the subject matter. With that said, let's begin. Mauritius is an island located in the serene and turquoise waters of the Indian Ocean. It is located about 1,100 nautical miles southeast of neighboring Madagascar. Port Louis is the capital, and the current population of the island is said to be 1.27 million. Although English is generally accepted as the official language, French, Mauritian Creole, and Bhojpuri are also considered the main languages, with Mauritian Creole as the most commonly used. To make more sense of this, let's journey to the past some 8 million years ago. According to research, Mauritius was formed from a volcanic eruption in the Indian Ocean. For many years, the island was free from the human gaze and was home to a vast array of exotic flora and fauna. The now extinct dodo bird was indigenous to the island of Mauritius and now reigns as the island's national symbol. The dodo bird was a flightless bird that only inhabited Mauritius, but unfortunately became extinct upon the introduction of deforestation and hunting from later human interaction. There is much speculation about who were the first to discover Mauritius, but for the sake of this video, we will start with the Dutch. The Dutch staked claim to the island in 1598 and named the island Prince Mauritius Venezuelan in honor of Maurice of Nassau, Prince of Orange. Mauritius is the Latin version of the name that we all use today. Mauritius, like many places in Africa, was abundant and flowing with natural resources. With Mauritius being located just south of the equator and slightly over the Tropic of Capricorn, the Dutch took advantage of the island's hot and humid climate and imported sugarcane plants from Indonesia. Speaking of sugar, let's talk about it for a second. Today, this ingredient is extremely accessible and often used as a base in many of the food and drinks that we daily consume. However, despite today's widespread usability, sugar was once a rarity in Europe and only available to the rich. It was owned by those of a high social status and used to impress guests at soirees, as it was incorporated into highly coveted desserts. What's also interesting is that it was used to create many aristocratic light fixtures and dining room decor. Salt was used for many years as a means of preservation, but in 1555, Nostradamus cited sugar for its preservation properties in relation to fruit. With all of the rave around sugar, the Dutch smelled opportunity on the Isle of Maurice, but they were then faced with another hurdle. Who was going to cultivate it? For 112 years, the Dutch occupied Mauritius while facing extreme weather conditions, famine, rodents, bouts of locusts, and finally gave up in 1710 when they decided to call it quits. In walked the French during 1715 and named the island Île de France. Like many European settlers at the time, the French were laying stakes and colonizing many countries throughout the world for their natural resources. French of high-class status and other Europeans stayed in colonial houses like Maison Eureka while in Mauritius. These homes were built to withstand the tropical heat, entertain guests, and offer comfortability.
So good morning and welcome to the colonial house. I am Réunion. So this house was built in 1836 by an Englishman named Mr. Cole. Then it was bought by the French family Leclésio in 1856 and they lived there till 1980. In 1985, they decided to sell the house as there were too many heirs. There was 104 in total and they could not share. So Leclésio at that time, he was a judge, but he also owned sugarcane plantation. That's why we can say that he was a rich man. All the doors of this house are made with tambalacoque wood, and the tambalacoque is a local wood found in Mauritius. Now we are in the Chinese room, and the Chinese room was not a comfortable room, so we were not sleeping here. At that time, the Chinese room was mainly to prove that they had values, but also that they were rich. And in this house, we got a Chinese room, as Leclésio himself, he was a judge. From that side, the sofa bed made with sequoia wood, the tea set, and the Chinese gong used to announce for the meal. So, here we are in the room of the eldest son who had a lot of privilege as he had a room for himself. The 16 other children were upstairs and it was like a sleeping room. The girls one side, the boys another side, and in the middle the servants to look after them. That's why there were so many servants in this house. The woman was to look after the kids, to take care of the house, and the man was for all the small works and also for the plantation. So now we are in the bathroom, and the bathroom was completely outside of the house. This was mainly to prevent fire because of the heater, which used woods and charcoals. So they need to manipulate from one side to have water and from the other side to stop the water. Of course, there was a water tank on the top. So now we are in the kitchen, and the kitchen was completely outside of the house. This was mainly to prevent odors, but also fire, as the house is completely made of wood. The other side of this kitchen was used to store food, but now we renovated as a new kitchen that we still use every day, mainly for our restaurants. One is known as the Baba, and this is La Roche à Curie. So at that time, they put spices in the middle with a little bit of water. And they need to manipulate like this to crush everything to form a paste, and that's what they put in the curry. This one to wash clothes with a brush and the soap, and this one mainly for coconut oil. So they cut the coconut into pieces, we put it inside, and we need to turn like this, and they collect the oil here mainly for the massage. So that's a little bit about the house. I hope that you have enjoyed your visit, and let me show you the way for the gardens and the 4 waterfalls.
After the Dutch aborted their mission in Mauritius, the French realized that it was going to take a lot of work and labor to cultivate sugar and the rest of the land on the island. This is when the African slave trade was introduced in Mauritius. This story bears similar to that of the transatlantic slave trade, in which 11 to 12 million slaves were exported from West Africa to the Americas from the mid-16th century until the 1860s. However, the slaves that arrived in Mauritius were from the east coast of Africa, from countries such as neighboring Madagascar and Mozambique. Both slaves that were brought to the Americas and Mauritius bared a similar fate, as they were ripped away from their families, stripped of their freedom, forced into labor, and treated as property. They often worked 12 to 14-hour days without pay while cultivating the sugar cane fields in the hot and humid climate. They were also responsible for building infrastructure throughout the island while laying the foundations for buildings and roads. Their immense contribution still rings bright throughout present-day Mauritius and is echoed in the beauty of the diversity of the people of the island. Song and dance have always been synonymous and deeply embedded in African culture since the beginning of time. For the slaves, they used instruments, music, and syncretized body movements as a way of mental escape from the tribulation that they were living in. The rhythmic succession of movements and postures formed the traditional Mauritian Sega dance, which is now classified as a cultural heritage by UNESCO. Finally, slavery was abolished in 1835 during the British occupation. After slavery ended, slaves were faced with a cold reality when they received no reparations or provisions for their labor. But former slave owners were compensated for the loss of their human cargo. The end of slavery did not mark the end of hard labor in Mauritius, as there was still much work to do and now maintain. With sugar crops now widespread throughout the isle, the British decided to import thousands of Indian indentured servants and Chinese migrants. Indian laborers docked in what we now refer to as Aparavasi Ghat, which is located in Port Louis. There were almost 450,000 Indians who relocated to Mauritius, and they make up the largest ethnic group on the island today. Unlike their African counterparts, the Indian indentured servants were provided with provisions, medical care, and small compensation for their field labor throughout the island. L'Aventure du Sucre is a Mauritian sugar museum located in Pamplemousse and remodeled after an actual sugar museum that was fully functional until 1970. The museum offers information regarding the history of sugar and the manufacturing process on the island. Guests are also welcome to take part in immersive experiences where multiple sugar types and rum variations can be sampled. If you're a history buff, the museum also offers loads of informative resources in the form of visuals, scripts, audio, and tour guides to help you do a deep dive into the history of the island. As the story goes, Mauritius gained its independence from the British on March 12, 1968. With its early introduction of European settlers, African slaves from Madagascar and Mozambique, mixed-race individuals of African and European descent known as Creole, Chinese migrants, and Indian laborers, it's no wonder that Mauritius is seen as a rainbow nation for its multiculturalism. Today, Mauritius is one of the most diverse countries in the world, and despite its checkered past, majority of Mauritians live together in peace. In addition to its vast array of cultural influences, Mauritians practice a diverse amount of religions that span from Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, and Hinduism. Mauritius is still famous for its vanilla, sugar, and even rum, but they all symbolize a deeper meaning of strength, regard, and respect for those that came before us and sacrificed their lives so that we can enjoy this beautiful island paradise that we now revere and love. Thank you so much for watching.